Why do avoidants come back after they've distanced themselves or broken up with you? Well, most people think it's because they miss you or because they suddenly realize your value. And while that can be partly true, the real reason is actually much deeper. And once you understand it, you'll see why no contact plus one other thing is the most powerful strategy you can use with an avoidant. So stay tuned and you'll find out what that is. Hi, this is Lucia with The Art of Love. I'm a dating and relationship expert specializing in helping you get your ex back or to get over your ex. And welcome back, my beautiful no contact army. Have you been a good little soldier and stayed in no contact? Well, if you haven't been a good soldier, then be sure to download my app Silencio if you haven't already to help you stay in no contact. And the link to that is underneath every single video and podcast. And if you too would like to join our army, all you have to do is hit the subscribe button and the bell notification and you're in. And to read our manual, go to nocontactsecrets.com where you can read 2 free chapters before you purchase the book. Okay, so let's start with what most people believe, which is that avoidants come back because they miss the familiarity, they realize they had more freedom with you than they thought, or they finally grew up and figured out what they lost. And sure, those things can play a role, but if that's all it was, then you'd see a lot more exes coming back a lot sooner. And if you know anything about avoidance, it's that they don't operate the way that most people think. An avoidant, whether they're dismissive or fearful, values space and independence above almost everything else. When they feel you getting too close, too dependent, or too anxious, their instinct is to pull away. It's not necessarily about you, it's just how their nervous system is wired. So if you chase them after a breakup or constantly reach out, what do you think happens? They retreat further. They need distance to feel safe again. I want you to imagine that your relationship with your avoidant ex is like a galaxy. So you're one planet and they're another planet. And between you is this gravitational push and pull. When you're chasing, they're pulling away. But once you stop chasing, once you go no contact, you create what's been called a black hole. And if you're into quantum physics, the way I am, then you probably already know that a black hole is an empty space that pulls everything into it. So in the same way, when you step back and stop trying to get their attention, you create a powerful emotional vacuum. And at first, the avoidant feels relief. They think, phew, finally, I have space. No one's pressuring me. I can breathe. But over time, that relief turns into something else, emptiness. Your absence, because there's no more texts, calls, or connection, it becomes noticeable. The void you left behind pulls at them. Avoidants don't miss you when you're still around, begging for attention. They miss you when you're gone. Because when you're chasing, they can't appreciate you. You're right there, and it's too much. But when you disappear, they start to realize what they no longer have. It's the old, don't know what you got till it's gone. And no contact creates space where the avoidant no longer feels trapped or overwhelmed. And this distance can trigger longing, not just because you're absent, but because that absence triggers feelings they had when they were with you. They miss the laughter, the intimacy, the security, even if they ran from it at the time. So it's not about logic, it's about the emotional vacuum that no contact creates. So how does this usually play out? Well, right after the breakup, they feel free. They may even convince themselves that it was the right choice. With you gone, they settle into their independence. And this is where most people panic and think, they're never coming back. Oh no. However, weeks or months later, the black hole effect sets in. And they start remembering the good times. They wonder what you're doing. And suddenly the silence doesn't feel so good anymore. And this is when they test the waters with a small text, a social media like, or some other little excuse to reach out. And if the vacuum is strong enough, if you haven't been chasing, they start moving back into your orbit. Now, a quick warning, this only works if you stay secure during no contact, which I know if you're anxious, it's going to be very hard to stay secure. Because if you panic and break it too soon, you're going to collapse that black hole. If you keep checking their social media obsessively and they know it, or send little just checking in messages, then you're feeding their avoidant tendencies instead of triggering the vacuum. This vacuum causes them to eventually become introspective, which in turn leads to longing. That's why it's so important to trigger that vacuum. The power of no contact lies in your ability to hold your ground, to show without words that you can live, grow, and thrive without them. That's what flips the script in their mind. So, what makes avoidance come back after no contact? I mentioned there are two things. It's not just familiarity, it's not just missing your company. So, one is the psychological pull of absence, the black hole effect that happens when you stop chasing and you give them space. Once their relationship pressure is gone, once their deactivation systems aren't being triggered, they can begin to reflect and maybe even idealize the connection. And that's when their perspective starts to shift. This triggers them to reach out because they want to fill that emptiness. And that can only happen if you're no longer around. And secondly, when enough time has passed and they realize that you're not so easily replaced, even though they thought you would be. And that's when things really start to turn around. Your silence becomes louder than anything you could say. If you're anxious, you're always thinking, I just need to talk to them. I need to communicate. No. Once you're no longer available, you become more desirable. So for those of you worried that your ex is going to forget about you, it's actually the opposite. That's just your anxiety talking. So tell it to shut up. Your mind can either be your biggest hater or your biggest motivator. And the role it plays is up to you. And I want to mention that if you've heard me talk about the 60-day rule, you'll be expecting to hear from your ex between days 45 and 60. However, if your ex is an avoidant, especially a dismissive avoidant, it will take longer. So don't freak out if 60 days have gone by and you haven't heard from your ex. Doesn't mean that you'll never hear from them. And I'll put the link to that video in the upper right-hand corner on YouTube. So remember, the best move you can make with an avoidant is to step back and let the black hole do its thing. Now I want to hear from you. How long have you been in no contact and how is it going? And if you would like my help to get your ex back, you can contact me at theartoflove.net/coaching and we will send you the rates. They are not on the website, and the link to that is underneath every video and podcast. If you found this video helpful, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to this as a podcast and want to help the show, then just download this episode. And finally, remember, love inspires, empowers, uplifts, and enlightens.